Okay, I think we've got people starting to come into the room, which is fantastic. Welcome everybody as you start to join us. It's just clicked over 10 o'clock in Queensland. Jules, you're in Melbourne. It's already 11 there. I won't make any jokes about Victoria being ahead of Queensland.
I would say we used to be.
Yeah, I think that
And then
tide might have
2020
turned.
happened.
So we might just wait for everyone to join. We've got very great registrations for this webinar. We've got a lot of people registered, so expecting quite a few to be on the session today. Congratulations, everyone, for getting back to work and wanting to come and do a bookkeeping webinar so early in the year. I think that's fantastic. We
Billy, you're
sort
still
of
on
thought,
holiday, mate, judging by your background.
yeah. I'm still on holidays, permanently on
You
holidays.
wear the shirt on the beach.
Oh, come on. It's my fishing shirt. Um, all right, we've got plenty of people still coming in, but it is just past 10 o'clock. So everyone is busy. We all got plenty to do. So we're going to get cracking here. Firstly, I wanted to say a big welcome to everyone for joining. We've got a great session today on bookkeeping for builders and tradies. Nadia is head of our bookkeeping team. I'll talk a little bit more about Nadia in a minute. She's going to be driving all the great content for today. Jules is from Buildxact. We're very privileged to have Jules on the session today. He'll be contributing throughout as well as the expert in that field. This is a bookkeeping for builders and tradies session. As you know, we are going to use Buildxact as the software example though when we're covering off on estimating and job management. So it's great that we've got Jules. If we could at the beginning though, I wouldn't mind. We're going to be using chat throughout, and so I just wanted to make sure that chat is working for everyone. And so I'll just enable it for everyone. Why don't I do this every time? Come on. Here we go.
Yeah, Phil,
Okay.
Phil made a
It's
Phil made a
it,
massive boo-boo on this once, and we got half an hour into a webinar and realized no one could use the chat.
why aren't they chatting? If
Yeah.
you could, can you please just put in where you're coming from today? We'd love to know where you're located, and what is it you're hoping to get out of the session today. And if you could just say to everyone, so that we can all see where you're coming from. Brisbane, Cairns, Kingaroy, Sydney, Adelaide, Toowoomba, Salamander. My God, we're really from all over the place, which is fantastic. Anything as well that you want specifically covered or that you're really interested in getting out of today's session too, just pop that in there. But we will be using this chat throughout. So we're not using the Q&A function, so don't drop anything in there. All right, we might kick off. So I'm just going to share my screen to begin with. So I'll just do that. Okay, you guys can see that okay. So as I said, this is a session on bookkeeping for builders and tradies. A bit of housekeeping right at the beginning here. The agenda that we're going to be going through today, I'll kick off just at the beginning with a bit of background on who we are and just a bit of scene setting for today's topic, just to, I guess, set the table, get everyone's head in the game. We're going to be talking about then, well, Nadia will kick off with the tech stack. So what the ideal technology you should be using is these days. We'll then go through some ideal workflows and processes, and then wrapping up at the end there around resourcing. So looking at who's doing your bookkeeping, what to look for in terms of good bookkeepers, and how to resource bookkeeping in your business. I just wanted to point out we're not getting into we don't. This is a webinar. It's not. So we don't have the time today to cover off on, a lot of detailed software functionality. It's mostly about the fundamental concepts you really need to care about if you want to get your bookkeeping right, as well as some tips and tricks along the way. Because Nadia's, been doing this thing for a long time, so she will be able to share a lot of her experience as we go. In terms of some interactivity that we'll have throughout, we're going to be using some polls throughout the session just to keep everyone awake and engaged, and add a little bit of interest as well for everyone in terms of those answers to some of those polls. They are anonymous, the polls, so don't worry about that. We will have a survey at the end though, so please, when you sign off at the end, a screen will come up. We'd love to get your feedback on the session today and some ideas for future sessions as well. We'll be sending out the recording from this session afterwards, so you'll be able to watch it back again, rewind, have a look at those key sections that you might have missed when it was live, and we'll be sending that out to people who registered as well as any resources that we mentioned today, any calculators, or there's a good resource at the end where we give you questions to ask when you're interviewing a bookkeeper. There's things like that that we'll be sharing afterwards. In terms of questions, as I mentioned, just drop them into the chat. And we'll answer them as we go. We might not answer it immediately, but we'll try and answer it at a good point throughout when we come up for air. There is no such thing as a silly question. We're all here to learn, so please don't walk away from this session having not asked our experts today what it is that's on your mind. We'll also be offering free one-on-one sessions, both with the team at Xact and our bookkeeping team as well. Right at the end, there'll be a poll about that if you wanted to book a time with us to either get some more information about what we do, or if you want a hand with your bookkeeping setup and getting everything functioning the way you want. So that is that intro there. Jules, did you want to say anything right at the top?
Yeah, just the thing I always mention. I'm not sure how many people are Buildxact users, Xact accounting clients. But something I mentioned, I've come from accounting software background. I used to work at MYOB, and a lot of my role was to look after bookkeepers and accountants. And the main thing I used to always tell them was specialize in an industry, because it's that whole jack of all trades, master of none. And what you do find in the accounting space in general is people are spread way, way too thin. And that's from everything. That's from the knowledge and the nitty gritty stuff. It's from knowledge on software. If you're trying to go into construction, trades, hospitality, retail, etc., it's just impossible. Like, if you think the amount of trade and construction apps alone, think about that. How many are there for hospitality and table management and staff payments and all that kind of stuff? Like, it's huge. So the reason why we always work with Xact Accounting is one of the few groups or businesses in the country that specialize with building construction. And there's so much in there. Someone managing a restaurant or something is not the same as someone managing $800,000 of a client's money. Like, that is just night and day. Barely even the same same style of running a business. So I always stress at the start of these sessions, the thing I love about these guys is that they know it top to bottom every single little thing that they need to. So I always like to say that. And obviously, Phil, we've got that event coming up in a few weeks as well, which we'll get to at the end. But I'll be in Brisbane, and we're doing a little event at the Xact Accounting office. So you get to see me there if anyone is in Brisbane and wants to come along.
Yes, yeah, this is a in-person workshop. We don't get to do them very often, but we're going to do an in-person workshop, which will go for longer. It'll be a much more detailed sort of under the hood walk through the software. So we're really looking forward to that. Thank you for those kind words, Jules.
No problem,
we do enjoy working with you guys. Okay, so let's get going. Just quickly about Xact, if you don't know already, we have obviously a bookkeeping division. These are the three services we look after: bookkeeping, CFO advisory, and compliance. Compliance equals, tax and structuring, the sort of traditional compliance accounting. Everyone really has to have a tax accountant. It is the way of the world. Not everyone has a CFO advisory service. So CFO advisory is all about margin improvement, looking at how you're estimating, managing relationships with your suppliers, those sorts of things, but really the commercial domain as opposed to the tax domain. And then, of course, we have a separate bookkeeping division, which are real specialists in terms of building and construction, accounting and bookkeeping. Today, we've got Nadia, as I mentioned. Thanks for joining us, Nadia. Nadia is a very, very well qualified accountant. She's CPA. She's been she's worked in accounting firms before, but also in commerce, within businesses running, complex accounting setups. For the last 10 years or so, though, she's mostly been dedicated to bookkeeping and running teams of bookkeepers, running, lots and lots of clients. So a lot of experience and deep knowledge in terms of, not just the processes in place, but also all the software you've got to learn. Nadia, you're just like on YouTube all the time. Yeah.
I'm always learning something new and I love it. But yeah, I must say the building construction industry is very interesting. And so far, it's one of the best I've worked with. So I'm really enjoying it. And thank you for having me today.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I'm just going to go through a few core principles that'll help set us up for what Nadia is going to cover off. So we talk about this. If you've been on one of our webinars before, you might have seen this, this chart that I'm going to go through, but we talk about the growth challenge that exists in building and construction and running a business in this space. This is what we see quite often happen. So we see revenue or growth. This curve happens in this way. So businesses start up, they're going pretty well, they stabilize a little bit, then they take on some more work, get a bit busier, things get a little bit trickier, so they pull back a little bit and then stabilize, and then think they've got it pretty much sorted out, and then take off and take on a huge amount of work. Unfortunately, what we then often see is that profit, unfortunately, doesn't follow the same curve all the time. Unless you've got things sorted out, we regularly see that profit tracks pretty well to begin with. We saw that, wobbly bit here in terms of, things get a little bit hard, and we see profit fall out as a result. Things stabilize as people pick up and work a few more things out. But then when people take on a lot of work, unfortunately, we do see profit go through the floor. So there's this very different scenario around growth and profit, and you may have heard this term profitless boom, where people are doing really well, busier than they've ever been, but not making the profit at the end of the day that they feel like they should. Why? Well, often it's because of complexity. So when you're running a building and construction business, as you get bigger and as you grow, it gets more and more difficult to run that business and get the clarity that you need to run the business. There's a lot of moving parts, and so complexity is almost exponential as you get bigger. Why is there all this complexity? So in building and construction, a lot of it comes down to the fact that it's a lumpy cash flow cycle. So you're not getting paid at the same time that you're ordering materials. You're waiting for stages to complete. We've all heard that term as well, robbing Peter to pay Paul. Unfortunately, if you've got real cash flow issues, sometimes you're waiting for the deposit on the next job to cover, costs from the previous job. So there's this lumpy cash flow cycle. That is made worse by having, when you start to get multiple projects running at the same time. If you're running a few projects, you can usually stay on top of cash flow and some of those challenges, but that compounds that issue when you have multiple projects running simultaneously. And if you don't have it sorted out, then if you grow rapidly, all of that complexity just gets harder and harder. And underlying all of this is the fact that if your growth is going through the roof, or you're growing at a fair clip, you need to make sure that the systems and process and people in your business are keeping track with that growth, and so that your systems are improving and processes are improving, and you've got the right people around you to make sure that you're managing things the way you need to grow carefully. So what happens? You have a lack of financial visibility. You end up making knee-jerk reactions. There's a whole flow-on effect of not having the right systems, process, people in place. Ultimately, though, it can lead to profit erosion, or not even just confidence around the way profit's working, lack of predictability. And that in the end leads to stress on your finances, you're stressed, and there's a knock on to your relationships often too. So what's the fix? Well, you need to level up. So we need to level up our systems and processes. We need to improve the team. So who's on your team? Who are you using? You probably need to level up as well in terms of your knowledge. So I'm sure people on this call today fit that category. People wanting to learn how to do things better. So that's great that you're here with that mission. The real focus needs to be, we need financial clarity. Yeah, we need predictability and control. We need to be able to know what's coming down the pipe. And you need to be able to, as a business owner, you need to be able to leverage your time. Where is my time best spent in the business? Is it on admin and those sorts of things? Maybe when you're starting up, you don't have a choice. But as you start to grow, as that growth takes off, you need to quickly start looking at who is your team and where's my time going so that I can get the best impact in the business. I'm now just going to quickly cover off on some of these financial principles, just again to set the scene for bookkeeping. So when you're running projects and in building construction, COGS and the costs that you're incurring against each project is where you're going to win and lose the battle. And I've just got some benchmarks here in terms of what we see as a fairly standard breakdown in terms of dollars coming through the business. So we've got revenue here of $1 million, a fairly standard margin of 20%. So 80% of my COGS is going out. 80% of that revenue is going to go to COGS to pay for my materials and labor that's associated with producing the project. Then 10% or thereabouts is going to get eaten by my overheads. So electricity, accounting, all those sort of fixed costs or variables that you've got to run the business, but aren't necessarily project related. And after you've had that 10% come out, you're left with 10% profit at the end of the day, net profit. So that's the prize. Some accountants and others will go, look, need to cut your overheads. Cutting your overheads in this business model may be an important thing to do, but really stay on top of your COGS is the most important thing in terms of getting that net profit prize at the end of the day. And this just shows you how COGS at a business level. So if we just think of this graph, this part of the chart over here as your overall business, this just shows you how your individual jobs contribute to that overall business picture. And when we talk about job costing later on in the session and bookkeeping as an input to that, how important it is that you're measuring COGS and gross profit for each individual job, because it will contribute to your overall picture of the performance of your job. So that's a breakdown there. So we're going to run our first poll here, which is, how would you describe your bookkeeping setup? So I'll just launch that. This is just to kind of make sure our polls is working, but also just to get your head in the game and admit, I guess, where you're up to. So how would you describe your current BK setup? 0 is I'm in a world of pain, and 10 is I'm running a well-oiled machine. We just might get everyone to contribute that. It's looking a bit like a bell curve. I'll share these results in a second. But a lot of people sort of around the 5, 6, 7 mark, sitting in the middle of the frame, I would think. There's one person is running a well-oiled machine. Well, we'll get them. We might bring them on, Nadia, and they can contribute to
We need
the
them.
conversation, provide some advice. We might hire them. That'll be good. Okay, so I'll just end that poll there, and I'll share those results so we can see that, yeah, the middle of the curve towards the top, which is great. So I think we've got an audience today who having a good go at it, I would think, and running a reasonable ship in terms of the bookkeeping, looking to get it up to that well-oiled machine stage, I would think. So that is that. Moving on now to Nadia. So I'm going to hand it over to you now. If you want to share your screen,
Just
I'll
bear
just
with me.
stop sharing mine. And Nadia is going to take us through the bookkeeping foundations and the processes that we need to be focusing on to run a good bookkeeping setup.
Bear with me 1 second while I get there. Can you see that?
Got it. Yep, perfect.
Awesome. Okay. So thank you everybody for joining us. I'm very happy to be here. This is the second one that we're doing in this series. And every time we do these, we also improve on how we present them. We often figure out some information we didn't share in the previous one. So I think this one is pretty comprehensive, to be honest. So to start off with, your tech stack is very important to have good workflow processes with your bookkeeping. Accounting systems and software have come a long way over the years, which means less double handling, improved accuracy, and systems that give you the ability to track your business performance in a more dynamic way. Automating your systems is essential to stay competitive as well and save you a lot of time and energy. And having a strong tech stack is crucial for business efficiency, but setting it up correctly is just as crucial, because you can have all these fancy systems. If you don't set it up correctly in the beginning, they will not map and they will not work as they're supposed to. So first in that tech stack is your accounting software. Obviously, we are a Xero firm and we do prefer Xero. We recommend Xero for most of our clients as well, only because it is really designed for even people that are not accountants or bookkeepers. It is user-friendly and it easily integrates with other software as well. And it's, if you make a mistake, it's much easier to fix it in Xero than in some of the other accounting softwares. So if you're not on Xero already, I would seriously consider the switch. And it's not as hard as you think. Accountants and bookkeepers who really know what they're doing can do the conversion for you seamlessly. You don't have to do it yourself, and train you so that you can start to use Xero. So don't be scared of that change. It will definitely benefit you in the long run. Then connected to your Xero is a system called Dext, which is the old receipt bank. Some of you may have heard of it. Some of you might already be using it. Now, these days we are spoiled for choice, but at a minimum, I would say use Dext or HubDoc. HubDoc is free with your Xero subscription. There's limitations with HubDoc, however. The reason for that is Xero is not really investing more money in the development of that software. So we've noticed over the last few years, it's really fallen behind. Whereas Dext, it's a small monthly subscription fee, really won't break the bank, but it's a very powerful tool to have. It also has a fetch function to go and fetch documents out of your supplier account online if you set it up. It also has a statement reconciliation function. So at the end of the month, when your statements come in, the system can pick up the documents that came in through the month, like invoices and credit notes, and it will reconcile it to that statement, and it will point out and highlight where there's discrepancies. So it's much easier for you to find and reconcile that supplier account. And then obviously it pre-fills the bills, which then gets published to your Xero software. So you don't have to manually process any invoices, supplier invoices in your accounting software. And it's a filing system. It's a digital filing system, which everybody's loving. You don't have to keep files or boxes of receipts anymore. In that tech stack, of course, is your project management software, your job management software. Obviously, we use Buildxact a lot for our clients. It is designed, some businesses will be running 2 separate estimating job management platforms, but there are options out there. And of course, Buildxact is our first choice. It's crucial that the setup is done correctly as well. So I've seen many clients come to me saying Buildxact is not speaking to Xero the way it should. They're not getting the reports out of it, what they were expecting. And then 9 times out of 10, when we do a deep dive into their setup, it's literally just the setup that was wrong, a box that wasn't ticked or something like that. So it's crucial that you have somebody look at it for you if you're not sure yourself. If it's set up correctly, it will work seamlessly. Then in the you also have your time and attendance. Some businesses use Deputy. There are other time and attendance softwares out there as well that do integrate with Xero, but Deputy integrates with both Xero and Buildxact. Whether Deputy is right for you, I mean, that really depends on the business size and the size of your payroll as well, how many employees you've got. There are other options as well, like Xero Me, which comes with your Xero subscription. And it's free with your Xero subscription. If you set that up correctly, again, you can track your labor costs to the jobs properly. And you can then also enter those labor costs in Buildxact through a work order. And then obviously at the end of the day, if your tech stacks works properly, it's all set up properly, and you put in the data properly, you'll be able to run your reports properly. So let's run a poll. What's in your tech stack, if we can just find out from everybody?
Okay, I'm just going to launch this now. So what's in your tech stack? What are you using? So are you just using spreadsheets and an order sheet? Are you using, and this is multiple choice, by the way, estimating and job management software? So you've got something like a Buildxact, receipt catcher. Have you got a Dext or HubDoc? Dext is our preferred. It's got a lot of great functionality, as Nadia suggested. And then are you using a Deputy or a time and attendance piece? So that, I think most people, we're about halfway. It's great if everyone participates in these polls, because I think everyone then gets a good sense of where the market's at with this sort of stuff. You can compare yourself to the audience. So I think we've got about 70% of people now. So I might just share that one. Let's go share the results. So we've got 19 or 30% of people are using spreadsheets only. A lot of people using estimating job management software. So that's great. We've got about 80% of the people on the call now have made that leap into the cloud. Only half though using something like a Dext, a receipt capture. Stop like scanning and sending and emailing and all that sort of stuff. Dext is an amazing solution that will save you so much time. Nadia won't talk to you if you're not using Dext, by the way. And then time and attendance, 30%. What's the big downside of not using a time and attendance platform, Nadia? Or
one of that is you can't track your labor costs to your COGS. And I did notice somebody had a question, what is COGS?
What is COGS? Yeah.
What is your cost of goods sold? That is what that is.
Yeah.
And labor cost is part of those cost of goods sold as well. It makes up part of your gross margin on the job, and you want to track the labor properly to record that.
Yeah. So there's all of the team coordination upsides of having a deputy rather than sending SMSs, be here, be there. It's you're able to communicate with the team really well, but then you're able to use the time sheeting to be able to allocate that labor to the specific job and see how that, I mean, really labor is such a big cost for each project. So if you're not tracking that properly, how you know whether you're on track with your profit? So that's really important using a platform like that.
And I've had clients say to me that they don't trust their staff to do their own timesheets. I've heard that, or that their staff won't know how to enter it properly. If you have put a policy in place, and we've helped clients with this in the past, where we actually do a training session with their staff, and you put a policy in place, it's not that hard. And I've seen even people that can't really use a mobile phone, don't know how to use a mobile phone. There are people like that. Yep. They find it pretty easy to use as well. So it's all about training them and then putting the policy in place that it's a not negotiable in order to get paid. And I promise you, people will do that to get paid.
Yes. Okay, so that's great. A couple of questions coming in, like just generally cost of goods sold. This is all about the direct costs to produce the project. So carpenters, any of that labor that, anyone who's on site swinging the hammer, any of those kind of labor costs, yes, would be considered to be a cog. There's a statement in there around, yes, I'm using all of this, but they're not talking to each other properly. Well, that's
the setup.
That's the setup that Nadia is talking about, and we're going to be covering off on some of that in a minute as well. If your question doesn't get answered today as well, we'll be we get a copy of all these questions, so we'll try and answer some of it either directly with you afterwards or on email. We'll send out some information on the email afterwards as well. If you want, at the end, we're happy to hang around as well, and we'll do an extended question answer at the end of the session. Okay, Nadia, let's push on.
Next one. Okay. So as part of your bookkeeping processes, the start of that as well is your chart of accounts. This is where everything begins in your accounting software. Don't overcrowd your chart of accounts. We often see clients have their chart of accounts set up with accounts for every single activity and item, which will overcrowd the profit and loss statement. I've seen profit and loss statements 3 pages long, and it is just not useful at all. You need to understand your chart of accounts and be able to read your profit and loss and make sense of it. Keep it simple and don't have a laundry list. One of the other big issues we see is people not understanding the difference between cost of goods sold, which is the activity producing revenue, and overheads that are costs that will erode your net profit, but is necessary to run your business day to day. Like an owner's salary might have to be split over both categories, depending where they spend their time. We often see directors just pulling money out of the business, putting it to their drawings. It has a ripple effect, and I'm pretty sure some of you have heard of Div 7A, which I won't delve into. That's a compliance thing, but we are well aware of it, and I highly recommend getting your directors all on payroll. It's much cleaner that way. So don't overcrowd your chart of accounts with sub-accounts for every activity or job or customer. Set up the main accounts and use tracking categories for jobs and activities in Xero. Xero has 2 layers of tracking and you can, if you allocate the transactions to both layers, you can run reports, you can run a profit and loss statement for each job and for each activity as well. So you don't need all of those accounts on your chart of accounts. So again, overheads versus cost of goods sold. So it is really important that when you set up your business, or even after you've been running for a while, that you understand your chart of accounts and that you set this up correctly and that you know what the difference is between overheads and cost of goods sold. Part of your cost of goods sold, of course, as Phil mentioned as well, is the labor costs. If we get the tracking correctly done on your timesheets, then it can be tracked properly. The one thing I must just mention that no accounting software or payroll software is going to track your labor on costs, which is your superannuation costs. That needs to be done with a manual journal, either at month end or with each pay run, and you'll probably need somebody to show you how to do that. It is not difficult at all, or you can ask your bookkeeper or accountant if they are able to do that for you. But that's how you're going to track your labor costs properly. Some builders have told me they don't need to track their superannuation, but really you do, because it's a company expense and it's related to that job, and you want to have proper margins on that job. So when you set Xero up, there will be a lot of accounts automatically created, which is not the end of the world, but it's worth considering a tidy up and making sure you have some accounts set up that makes sense to you. Again, beware of the labor costs. Wages for directors, big thing there. Make sure that you split it up depending where the director spends his time. Some directors will be on the tools on site 3 or 4 days a week. 1 day of the week they're in the office doing administration and things like that. So you want to be sure that you split those labor costs for the director as well, which can be set up as well. So we highly recommend that you have your accounts, your chart of accounts neat and tidy and understand it. And we do offer training sessions on this one-on-one if you need more in-depth training on that. But these are basically just the main things on your profit and loss that you need to be aware of, so you don't double up on any expenses. So the key processes for bookkeeping, for your day-to-day bookkeeping, very basic stuff is your bank reconciliations. So we strongly advise that you do a weekly bank rec. Don't leave your bank reconciliations until the end of the quarter when your BAS is due. That creates a bottleneck. There's more room for error as well because you'll be rushing through it. Oops, sorry, I went too fast there. Sorry, let me get back. Okay, let's try again. Anyway, so avoid simply cash coding everything as well on your bank rec. Often the accounting software will give you a suggestion. It will say this relates to this bill, but you need to really check it. Don't just click yes on everything. For instance, if you've got a payment on the bank that is at a later date than the actual invoice date, at a future date than the invoice, then obviously that must be a red flag for you. What the software does, it builds up a memory as well for directly coded transactions. That memory will then give you suggestions of where it needs to go. So let's say you paid your director. The previous transaction you just direct coded to the drawings account. When there's another payment to that director with the same bank reference, it's going to suggest that for you. Read it and make sure that it makes sense, that it is going to the correct place. Don't just click yes on that. Accounts payable and accounts receivable, it's very, very important that you reconcile this as well regularly, again on a weekly basis, because you want to stay on top of your accounts. It's much easier to make sure your accounts stay clean day to day or week to week than it is to go and find something and do a big cleanup 3 or 4 months after it happened. Usually then it's going to cost you a lot more time. It's going to cost you potentially money to pay somebody to go and investigate and do a deep dive. So my advice is stay on top of your AP and AR every single week. If you've got an admin day in the office, those will potentially be your days where you run your bank rec, where you process your bank recs and also run your reports. You can run an age payable report in Xero, age receivable report in Xero. And my suggestion is to review that every week. And if anything stands out that is not, shouldn't be there, then fix it at that stage. I often see people sending receipts, cash receipts, into their AP, which is not a liability. So what happens, they reconcile the transaction on the bank because obviously it was paid already. It goes to the profit and loss statement, but then they also record the receipt through the AP. That doubles up your expense on your P&L and it erodes your bottom line. So you're not getting the true picture of what your actual bottom line is. So it's very good to do those checks because you will pick it up on the references of those transactions in your AP. Then your correct payroll processing. That we talk a lot about payroll today because it's such a huge cost to your business. It can really mess up your margins if it's not done correctly. So if you set up your payroll correctly in Xero to split direct labor cost, which is for cost of goods sold, or other wages under overhead. So under overheads, you will have your admin staff, a portion of your director's wages and things like that. Under direct labor, that will be your chippies, your electricians, your plumbers, people that are on the tools that you can track their labor costs to a specific job. So you will achieve a much more accurate margin on each job by doing that. And one thing to be aware of is that no accounting software will track the labor cost. So just remember that, which is the superannuation. Don't forget to process payroll for directors. I will keep saying that because we often get people not doing it or thinking it's okay to just live out of the business. You're just kicking the ball down the road, really, when you do that, because at come year end, your tax accountant or compliance account will have to fix that anyway. One thing that's come up a lot over the last, I'd say, 12 to 24 months is STP2. I know everybody is aware of it, but what we see often is people enroll their accounting software or their payroll software for STP2. By just clicking that button and enrolling does not mean you are compliant. and a lot of people are not aware of it. This is a requirement at the ATO level and is largely driven for reporting to Services Australia. So the STP reporting is not just the enrolling, but reporting those different categories of income. So under the awards, it includes baked in allowances in the awards, like your tool allowances, which is all-purpose allowances, registration allowances, and industry allowances. It all forms part of the total total hourly rate for the employees. So they do still earn the same amount. It is just broken up differently on their payslip, and it's reported differently. Because for Services Australia, they do not see allowances as part of your total income. So they will use your base, your ordinary rate. So we've got a bit of a template that we use where we split that out depending on the award. We've got people on plumbing and gas. We've got people on general on-site building construction. We've got people with air conditioning awards. So there's different rates for the all-purpose allowances. We split it up. We can help you with that, but we're more than happy to just share that with you as well if you want to try it yourself. But just be aware that the ATO hasn't really cracked down on businesses with the way they report their wages to give businesses more time to really get used to it, but they are going to crack down on it. So I would really recommend getting that sorted, and it can be fixed. So if your stuff's not correctly reported, it can be fixed before the financial year and before payment summaries are done. Then job costing. Again, we talk a lot about that. So it's critical. We recommend having a process in place to match invoices from suppliers and subcontractors to the specific job in your job management software. This will allow you to compare the actual costs to your original estimate, which is what you've got your Buildxact for, right? Ideally, you want to be able to run a report out of Buildxact and run a P&L out of your accounting software, and they must match, ideally. The only difference must be your overheads, which is normally not allocated to a job code anyway. So you can run a P&L just for a specific job. We do that on a month-to-month basis for a lot of our clients, where as a month-end check, basically, where we run the P&L, run a report, make sure it all matches, then we know nothing was missed. So that's definitely best practice, and it's good to check yourself always. So let's go on to the next one. Purchase orders. A lot of people say to me, Nadia, I don't need to do purchase orders, I'm too small. Well, I get that, and it is people are saying it's time consuming, and they often just pick up the phone and quickly speak to a subby or quickly put an order in. Definitely, I would recommend getting into the habit of doing purchase orders, especially if you want to scale your business. If you want to play with the big boys, this is what they do. So I would definitely highly recommend that. Because we still see too many operators not using point of purchase orders. It doesn't work that well. It locks in your price and timing. So you negotiate the price with your subby, or you place an order for materials, you negotiate that price and when it will be delivered. So it's all locked in. There's no guessing afterwards. With the bookkeeping, once those supplier bills start coming in, you can match it easier to the job code, especially if you're using somebody external from your business to do your bookkeeping, because that PO reference will be referenced on the supplier invoice. If it's not referenced, then you can just ask your supplier to always reference that on their invoices. It makes coding and matching a lot easier for whoever's doing it, including yourself. And of course, if there's a discrepancy, you'll pick it up quickly and you can take it up with them if there's some sort of dispute there. And you'll have financial clarity, the ability to see how much costs is still yet to come. And it helps you with your financial planning, because you know what's coming in a week's time or 2 weeks' time. You can plan your cash flow, sorry. And it is an amazing return on investment as well. So you are investing your time, but the return is that there is minor errors. There's no guessing, and many estimating job systems have made it much easier to use purchase orders as well. So highly recommend that. Let's do another poll.
Yeah, and we might hold off on that because I just want to keep pushing on because we've still got a bit to get through. But
Okay,
a big
we're running
shout
out of
out. I know there's a comment in there. I'm still trying to make it work. Purchase orders. Hang in there. It is like it's a bit of an investment up front. You know, you won the job, and to get all those purchase orders set up can take some time, but it just saves you so much time and energy and down the track. Running around trying to argue with suppliers or lengthy conversations with bookkeeping or your accounting people as to how things should be coded. The purchase orders just clean up all of that. So, yes.
Okay, so we
might
won't
just
run
move
the
on.
poll then?
Yeah,
Okay.
let's just move. Yep.
So this is just a quick sort of flow chart to show you how the data flows between the software. It's not an in-depth at the transaction level training that we'll do at another session. But this is just to show you how the data flow. So from your Buildxact, for instance, or your project management software, you will be raising a purchase order. On that purchase order, you've got the job number and you've got the materials, the items, or whatever it is you might need. So there's no guessing. That goes straight through to your supplier. The supplier then delivers the cost or the materials or the goods and the invoice. On that invoice, it should reference the order reference number. Some suppliers don't always do that, but if you insist on it, they will do it, like Bunnings and those guys. It will then get sent through into DEX. Now, there's different ways for these goods to be sent to DEX, and this is when you've actually received the goods and the services. It can come into DEX either directly from the supplier. So DEX has a fetch function, which I briefly mentioned earlier. It has a fetch function that needs to be set up. Again, the setup is crucial. So if you don't set up that fetch function, you can't expect the bills to just flow in. So you need to set up the fetch function. If you've got a Bunnings trade account, just as an example, you normally have an online login access to that account. You can use that login and you set up the fetch. DEX will go into their software and it will go and pull all the invoices, credit notes, statements that go through your account every single month. And it does that for a lot of suppliers actually, but the suppliers need to opt in for that function. They need to allow DEX access to their software. Obviously, for your subcontractors, you're not going to have that ability to fetch, but you have other options where if your subcontractor emails you their invoices, you've got a DEX email address, which is like an accounts email. You can just give them that and it will go straight into your DEX. Or if you want to review it first, it can go to your email and you can forward it onto the DEX account. DEX also obviously has the mobile app. So when you're on the go with your getting fuel, you can take a photo, send it into DEX. And while you're sending it into DEX, you can allocate the job code right there and then, and you can throw away the receipt. You never have to find it again. So it's amazing. From DEX then, it will code everything. It reads the information on the bill. It will code it. The only thing it does not automatically pre-fill is the job code. But because the job code is referenced on the invoice, you can then go and select the job code in the drop-down list, which job it relates to, because the jobs will be indexed as well. And I'll get to that a little bit later, how it gets to DEX. So from DEX, you publish your invoices into Xero, and that's where in Xero where you run your accounts payable and where you run your profit and loss statement and everything. So I always say, make sure you don't put rubbish into your accounting software. Make sure everything that goes in is accurate before it goes into your accounting software, so you don't have rubbish reports at the end of the day. From Xero then, it will then feed into Buildxact. Buildxact and Xero has the two-way integration, which works really well. It goes into the integrated bills section in Buildxact. Once it goes into the integrated bills section, you just need to go and match it to that open PO. I call it a waiting room. It's like a little waiting room. So you have the option to then go and match it to the open PO that you already created. Just one thing to bear in mind is Xero will sync absolutely everything to Buildxact, including overhead costs. So if it sits in the imported bills and it's not related to a job, you can just ignore it and clear it and take it off the list. It basically deletes it out of Buildxact. But it's nice and clean, and it's a good check to do as well. I would highly recommend, if you've got a bookkeeper that's doing your Dext and Xero for you, they should do the imported bills in Buildxact for you as well, because they're already coding everything. They're already recording everything. Let your bookkeeper then also allocate the costs in Buildxact. Everything else in Buildxact you can look after. That's the one section I would highly recommend your bookkeeper does for you. It's sort of, it goes hand in hand to make sure that Xero and Buildxact, the actual costs match. So this is just a little screenshot of what it looks like.
There was just, sorry, can I just jump in? Sorry, Nadia, there's
Yeah.
a question there about, whether you should use purchase orders for additional consumables and materials that are bought throughout the job. Just how, because you were talking about purchase orders and then having that come through Dext and into Xero, etc.
Yeah.
Not really. I mean, there's a question about materiality in terms of, if you're buying a bit of tape here, an extra packet of screws there or whatever, then it's still good. And you probably should set up Buildxact so you've got a line in there for consumables like that. So that then you can still match, because every cent counts, everything counts. So you can still match that to the job. But with those kind of incidental things,
don't need a PO for that.
I wouldn't be stressing about that. But certainly, particularly when you're kicking off all your major subbies, all of the major frames, concrete, all that sort of stuff, I'd be getting purchase orders in place for that sort of activity.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Or if you need to just pop into Bunnings to get something small, don't need a PO for that. That's fine. As long as you do allocate it to the correct job code within Dext and Xero.
Yep.
And I might just also mention, which I didn't mention before, your main source of truth is always your accounting software. For your actual bottom line, that will always be your main source of truth, because of these little consumables and overheads and all that other stuff that's not recorded in your project management software necessarily. That's always your main source of truth, is your accounting software. That's also where you pay your BAS and your taxes from. So make sure that's nice and clean. So this is just to show you how the job codes are set up in the two different softwares. So in Xero, it's got the tracking categories. It's got 2 layers of tracking categories in Xero that you can set up. Often we see the job code and stages for each job, so which you can also set up as part of your tracking. And then the job code must match the job in Buildxact. So this is just a little screenshot of what's in Buildxact, the one on the right, and then the one on the left is what's in Xero. I must also just mention that the J code, only having the J code is enough to map the transactions between the softwares. Having the address in there really makes no difference to the mapping of the data. It's not going to allocate any costs to the address. You can have it in there. It's nice to have for you to, I guess, read it easier, but it's not going to map the data. That J code is what's mapping the data. So just keep that in mind. And it's crucial that when you do set up a new job in your project management software, that you then also go and set it up in Xero. If you raise a new job in Buildxact, it's not going to automatically raise a new job in Xero. You have to go set that up. So setup is crucial in everything, every step of the way. If the setup's done correctly, everything will work perfectly. Then this is just a little snapshot of what the job codes look like in Dext. So I might just go back to this one quickly. So these job codes on the left in Xero that you've set up, because Xero and Dext speaks to each other, those job codes will sync through to Dext. It will come onto this little drop-down list in Dext. So you've got your bill coming in. It will pre-fill all of the data, the date, the supplier, the amounts, the GST component, everything. You just need to then go to the drop-down, allocate the job. That's what you need to do before you publish it in. So it will speak. As long as it's set up in Xero, the job code will come up in Dext. Another poll. Are we going to do this one?
Yeah, we might do this one, but then we'll move quickly through the rest of it. So what does your job costing and cost tracking look like? This is an interesting one. So I'm not tracking this at all. What is job costing? So I'm not really tracking costs at all. I have no visibility per job. Everything is one bucket. So we see that sometimes, like they're not allocating costs to the specific job. Some people then I'm tracking material costs per job, but not labor. So all the, actual hard materials, but they're still struggling to get labor. Some people then tracking both material and labor, and that's great to the specific job. And then the final thing is where you're tracking both material and labor and you're comparing it back to your original estimate. So you can see at any point throughout that project whether you're on track for your original estimated profit or not. So it's this is a hierarchy here, starting with not going too great to getting full visibility on how your profit's going at the end point. But, unless you're doing your bookkeeping right, unless you've got all of these processes in place, you got no hope. You won't be able to track any of that. So that's why we sort of keep returning to that as a fundamental. Okay, so that's that. We got half of the people are doing the right thing all the way through there. So the other half of people on this session, we've got some work to do to get all of that hygiene in place to be able to know whether you are traveling well with your profit per job. Okay, we've got the next slide here, I think, is month-end process.
Yep.
So we might just maybe just pick the eyes out of this because I wanted to get onto the resource section as well. So maybe the highlights version of this one, Nadia.
Yeah, I'm just going to do a quick overview of all this. You guys will get this recording and have all of this anyway. It's really good practice to have a good proper month-end close for your accounts. Make sure that your bank recs are fully reconciled and matches your bank statement at the end of the month. That's very basic stuff. But as long as you keep that clean every month to month, you should have minimal issues down the line. Make sure your accounts payable and accounts receivable reconciles to the supplier statements, and obviously the accounts receivable is on track as well. Make sure your superannuation liability on your balance sheet matches your accruals report, your superannuation accruals report for the period. It's crucial that those two match. We've seen too often where superannuation payments that were made to the super funds are being reconciled to the expense. Big red flag, because you're doubling up on your expenses. So if you do this check at the end of the month and the two don't agree, you'll know instantly there's something was misallocated, because you don't need to allocate the payment to the P&L. Again, don't forget payroll for owners. We're going to keep hammering on about that. And then one tip I can give to everybody, and this is probably the best one, I'd say, is at the end of the month, run a profit and loss statement. You can do a filter where you run it for unassigned tracked items, and nothing should come up unassigned under your sales or your cost of goods sold. There must be nothing unassigned. If there's something that pops up unassigned in your sales or your cost of goods sold, it means you didn't properly job track anything. Obviously your overheads will be unassigned.
So this is anything that you haven't assigned to a job through the tracking categories will come up, and really none of those things are either income or revenue or COGS that should be associated with a job should be there. If they are, it's great. So this is sort of a little bit of a cleanup job at the end of the month where you can run a P&L for unassigned, and then get those costs or income associated to the job.
You can, if there's something sitting in your cost of goods sold on the unassigned P&L, you can just drill into it, drill into the transaction, allocate the job code, and go back and do the rest. That's the nice thing about Xero, which I love, but that drilling into transactions.
Yeah, you can click right through all the way to the actual invoice. Yeah.
So I'll go to I'll have to click through this. Sorry. Okay, so the BK resources. So we're just going to talk about now who's doing your BK, you outsourced or hiring someone in-house, the different options you've got. I just wanted to start this section though with just a couple of quotes just to get our heads in the game on this. So this is a quote initially from one of the leading executive coaches. He coaches people at Intel, Google, and the like. Earns a ridiculous amount of money. He's got some great books out there. So if you want to do a bit of self-improvement, I recommend
recommend reading a bit of Marshall Goldsmith. But he says, what got you here, and I'm sure it wasn't just him, what got you here won't get you there. So the things that you've been doing to get your business to the current size will have been okay, I guess, to get to that point. But if you're gonna grow and get larger and larger, you need to be looking at systems and processes, what you need to be doing to get to the next stage. The other quote here is from Warren Buffett. Everyone should know who Warren Buffett is. He talks a lot, and Charlie Munger, they talk about this circle of competence idea. So being very, very clear about what you're good at, what you're competent at, and that can be quite a lot of things. But the thing to really focus on and know is where your boundaries are with that. So where are you starting to stray into areas of running your business where you're not really the expert, you don't know this stuff, and you need to either improve and really double down on self-education and learning, self-development, or you need to look at, well, how do I get someone else into the team that can look after something that's really vital? So next slide, thanks. So when we look at resourcing for bookkeeping, there's two major factors we want to look at. First of all, their expertise. So do they, we're not going to come in and, like Nadia was saying to me yesterday, I'm not going to go and do my own kitchen and bathroom renovation. That's not a good idea. I need an expert to do it. It's the same with bookkeeping. You need someone who has the expertise. This is, as we've said throughout the session, it's a really cornerstone foundation of your business. And so you've got to get it right. So you need someone who has good expertise. The second thing is, we do recommend as well that it is their specific focus. As you get bigger, there's a lot of noise that can happen in a business, and we recommend that you have someone who is dedicated to bookkeeping, who really, that's their primary focus. Now, as you're starting out, that might not be possible, and we get that, but as soon as you can, you need someone who's has the expertise and then also has bookkeeping as a very specific focus. The result of that is that you should get clarity, predictability, and control, and they're the things we talked about at the top of the session. You'll have you won't be questioning whether your books are right. You won't be questioning if your reconciliations are up to date. You won't be questioning if your data coming across from Buildxact to Xero, etc., is accurate or not. So you'll have this clarity and the predictability. You're not getting hit out of the blue from surprise invoices you weren't expecting, all that sort of stuff. So you have predictability and therefore control. You can make good decisions in your business, and you should be able to unlock your time as well to be working on higher leverage activities. So we're going to do a comparison now on this next slide of the different types of approaches and pros and cons. And I might even just ask you a few questions on this, Nadia. So we've got there's three main ways to go about bookkeeping in your business. There's the DIY, so I'm doing it myself, or I've got my partner or better half doing the bookkeeping. Outsource, so using an external bookkeeper or a bookkeeping firm, or hiring someone in-house. So these are the three kind of broad approaches to doing your bookkeeping. So when you start out, I guess, DIY is probably about the only option, unless you're doing it, forward thinking from the get-go and you want to, have someone, a specialist in at that point. But usually people do it themselves. What's the main upside of being able to do DIY your books?
Well, it's the cost saving part of it, and you're also learning a new skill, which is always good. And you get sort of into the financials of your business, understanding it better, which I think is good as a business owner to have that, so that down the line when you're bigger and you have to step out of the DIY bookkeeping yourself, you'll have a clear understanding of what's going on when somebody talks financials with you. So it's not always a bad thing, but it is very time consuming. That's the only thing. It's time consuming and there could be potential errors, but I don't think it's a bad thing to start off with it.
Not at all. And I think what you were saying earlier on, talking about even just something as fundamental as a chart of accounts, actually knowing what each of those accounts is, which ones are going to be COGS, which one's going to be overheads, and really properly understanding how that setup works. If you DIY it and you really do it carefully and earnestly, and do a good job of it, then you will get that, foundational. And there's a lot of resources around these days online. Xero have got a whole lot of resources to help.
I might just add, sorry, Phil, about the
Sure.
DIY. If you're going to do it yourself, be very disciplined that you're doing it regularly. Do not fall behind, because you're just digging a hole for yourself if you're going to fall behind. Really don't leave things. Don't, simple things like having copies of the invoices, the source documents of the transactions. Hopefully you never get an ATO audit, but you want to be prepared for that. So be disciplined. Upload your documents properly, code your documents properly from the get-go. I've got a client that started a business just recently, 2 months ago, and from day one he wanted to do the right thing, and it's a breath of fresh air, to be honest. And learning as he goes as well. I'm very eager to stick to best practice processes as well, and I'm very certain he's going to reap the rewards of that effort he's putting in now. So you have to be disciplined.
And I think when you start out, that's sort of, you're probably not going to have much other option. But as soon as things get busier, really, the career guidance that we're going to give you here today is: did you get into business to be a bookkeeper? Probably not. We do have clients who just love it and really enjoy doing it, and they're happy to keep pressing on with it. But if you're about building a business, then it's probably you're going to reach a point where you're going to outgrow doing it yourself. So then the other options we've got are in-house and outsourced. In-house, if I just talk briefly about that once you get to be a decently sized business, so we're talking sort of probably 20 mil and above, you're going to start to have an accounting team. You'll have potentially even starting to look at a CFO and a proper kind of finance team. And that's when you're at the sophistication level. Hopefully you'll have a pretty good understanding of the accounting function as well. So you'll be able to hire a really good in-house bookkeeper or an APAR team. The problem with hiring someone in your team initially, if you do it too early, is if you're not completely across what a good bookkeeping person looks like in this space, it's quite hard to hire one and find one and know that they're going to do the right job for you. And so we hear that all the time. Unfortunately, we have people come to us who've had an internal bookkeeper and they didn't know what they didn't know, and so they weren't even across the fact that things weren't being done as they should have been done, and that can lead to a whole raft of issues we won't go through now. So, I mean, we're a little bit biased here, obviously, but the middle column, as soon as you get to some sort of scale and you don't want to be the BK expert, then the idea of outsourcing is a really good way to go. If you're using a firm like ours, there are others around, but if you're using a firm like ours, you're going to have someone this is all they do, like day in, day out. They're just wanting to be the best around, experts, learn all the software, learn all the awards, all of the kind of, legislative issues, regulations, all SDP2, all of that sort of stuff that, really you've got things that you need to be doing to drive the business, and it's probably not learning all of that. And so having experts in the space is a real benefit. I guess as well, Nadia, if one of your bookkeepers goes on leave or something like that, you'll have another one can step in. Is that that'd be the way it goes? Yeah?
Yes, there's redundancy. So that's the thing. If you've got somebody in-house, or if you're doing it yourself and you go on leave or they go on leave, everything stands still with the books. If you're outsourcing it to a firm, the right bookkeeping firm will continue doing everything, even if that team member goes on leave. That's normally working on your accounts, because if you're paying a monthly fee, for instance, your accounts need to stay up to date. It's not, they shouldn't be parking it on a shelf for when they are ready to work on it. It needs to keep flowing. So the right team will have redundancy. So definitely ask that question. And they all have the expertise because they get trained regularly.
And it's a fractional thing.
Yeah.
So you don't have to pay for a full-time bookkeeper if you're using an outsourced company. You can just pay for the amount of activity that you need to have in place. So, a bookkeeper might be looking after these days because of the technology, and because they're experts and they're really good at it, they might have, say 10 clients that they're looking after. So you're not having to pay a full-time wage. It's those 10 clients that are paying that wage. It also means that it can scale. Nadia, sorry, I was just going to say that as you grow, you can probably use more and more of the outsourced time as well.
Yeah. So I might just add as well there that a lot of people, have this misunderstanding that an outsourced bookkeeper is also a PA. It's not. So if you have, no, it's not. So if you need a virtual assistant, that is a completely different service. Completely, do not combine the two. Virtual assistant and outsourced bookkeeper is not the same task. So do not combine
that was that bit we were talking about where it should be a dedicated focus. So unfortunately, and sometimes again, when you're starting out, you kind of have to have this, but you have a bookkeeper who's also doing admin and a whole bunch of other things. This is a mission critical piece of your financial success. So I think it needs to be someone who's really focused on it. Okay, we might keep moving because we are pretty much out of time here. So this is just a guide. So DIY is probably pretty good up to about 600,000 turnover a year, but after that, it's just you're probably going to outgrow it unless you really love it and you want to do it yourself. Outsourced can be good up to about 30 mil, 20 to 30 mil, but then over that, really, you're probably going to have a finance team in-house, and there's some advantages to doing that as well. Okay, next slide. Who's doing your BK? We might just quickly do that one. So I'll go back here. Who's doing your BK? Launch that. Always very curious about this one. So me and my partner, I'm outsourced or to a BK. I'm outsourcing to a specialist building industry BK. I'm a dedicated in-house, or I'm an in-house who's doing other things as well. They're the options on that one. Okay, that's pretty good. There's a whole mix there. So I'm going to share that one. A lot of people doing it themselves still, so 40%. So yeah, hopefully we've given you a bit of a call to action today around that. If it's not something you love and you don't want to be the best at it, then maybe start to think about other ways of going about it now. So next slide there, if you wouldn't mind. This is a resource that we're going to send out. It's about if you're going to hire someone internally or you want to use an external resource to do it, there's some questions you can ask them to really qualify whether they know what they're talking about. So things like, well, have you worked for other builders? How many do you have on your books? Can you explain job costing to me? Because it's really important to me. So some of these questions, and we'll send that around on the email. And any of this stuff, please come back to us on email as well if you've got any questions about it. Next slide. So I'm just going to put this one up. This is if there's been anything that's piqued your interest today, and you wanted to you wanted a free consultation, you can do that now. If I can choose the right poll here, where is it? This one. Would you like a free one-on-one session here? Oh, hasn't come up. Why is that not working? Launch. No, it's not working. I'll use a different one. Sorry for that. Not sure why that didn't work. This one. Oh, none of them are working. Well, that's no good. Let me just try something else here. System malfunction. I think we might have to do this via email, unfortunately. Stop. This one here. Okay, sorry. I think I have it now. Go. Excellent. Okay, so we've got 2 questions on this one for Xact Bookkeeping and one for Buildxact. So if you wanted a session with Xact Bookkeeping on learning more about our services, that's the option there. Yes, I want to know more about Xact services. Yes, I need some help with my BK setup. So you might just need a one-on-one session. How do I get everything talking together the way I want it to? Or how do I get purchase orders working better for me? These are multiple choice options there. And then the other one is for Buildxact. Yes, I don't use Buildxact and I want to learn more. So there's an option for that. Or yes, I'm a Buildxact user, but I just need some support. So if we need Jules and his team to help you out some more there. So that's that option there as well. And then obviously with both of those questions, you can say, nah, I'm all good. And I'm happy just to keep doing it myself and learning as I go. So they're the options there. I'll just leave that up for a little bit longer. If you wouldn't mind switching across to the next slide. Thanks, Nadia.
Okay. There we go. So Julian is gonna, are you there? There we go. I think you're on mute.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry I didn't jump in there, Nadia, earlier on.
Okay.
You were doing a great job explaining all the stuff, and I didn't really feel like I had too much to add on top of that, but I was still here listening. I'm not sure where Phil's gone, but we are running an event in February.
Yeah.
I'm starting to say, like, you know, how far away February is, and then I'm realizing that February is
Yeah, it's very close.
soon. It's yeah, it's kind of a bit mental that we're almost 12th of the year down. Sorry for you guys that are already feeling like Christmas was only yesterday. But yeah, I'll be in Brisbane in February, first week of Feb. So we're going to be running an event at the Xact Accounting premises. So it's going to be more of the detailed stuff. So more of the actual parts on the software and how that side of it works. If you want to come in and ask questions about Buildxact, feel free to do so. Obviously, Nadia will take you through a lot of the workflow in terms of how everything all pairs up. Like, this is obviously more of a, overarching sort of session, Nadia, whereas more the nitty-gritty and questions and things like that from people. So bring your laptops if you want to come. Is there a link there at the moment, Phil? Is there one ready yet?
I think Phil's laptop died, so yeah, that's okay. We will move on with this. So yeah, the session will be on the 6th of February. I will be there as well, and Jules will be there. We'll also have a few of our CFO advisors that work in our CFO team. Now, these are the big guns. They work with everything, estimating, dashboard reporting and things like that, if you've got questions around that. So really you'll have a room filled with some really experienced people that can help you. These will be small sessions because there are limited spaces as well. I might just mention that, but we'll run a few of these. This will definitely not be the only one. We will do a few of these as well. Yeah, and that is everything, everybody. Thank you so much. I don't think there's anything else.
No.
I think we're done.
My laptop just
there you are, Phil.
completely died and then came back to life. So
That's
thanks
okay.
for jumping in there. But yeah, we're looking forward to seeing you in person if it's practical for you to come along to that, if you're in Brisbane or around Brisbane. We haven't run an in-depth workshop like that one before. We've done sort of bits and pieces, and of course we do it one-on-one. But I think, that'll be a really valuable session. Jules, anything else there from you?
So what I'll do, guys, for anyone that hasn't seen this, we ran a webinar last week around some of the key simple getting starting tips on Buildxact. So this is stripping out all the details, stripping out all the supply prices, about everything detail that you need to know about Buildxact. And it's like, how do I want to get up and running if I've got 2 hours to spend right now? This is the webinar you want to go back and watch. So I'll just pop that into the chat for everyone. And I can sort of go through some of this stuff as well if anyone wants to look at that sort of in person. at the session there. And the other thing, if people do want to hang around, if you guys are okay with this, just a quick one, I thought it might be good, Phil, to give people a quick update on some of the stuff that's coming, because what people on here are using Buildxact. So we are going to get a lot better at sort of talking about our roadmap and getting feedback on what people are thinking. But there's a huge feature that I've just given the go-ahead that I can talk about it. It's an AI way of estimating. So I'm going to get this right, but Bunnings, Mitre 10, Dalston's, and I will confirm the last one in just a second. Bowen's, as far as I'm aware, they're the 4. So the way it will work is you'll be able to type into Buildxact in the estimate costings category. There'll be a little button that comes up saying estimate with AI. You can click on that. You can type what you want in. The more detail, the better. Hit enter, and Buildxact will use your supplier pricing to pull in the items and recipes that you'll need to complete the estimate. So you won't have to go through searching through catalogs and creating your own recipes, your own items, your own templates. You can use the AI tool to do that, and it will do it for you. It'll just ask you what the measurement.
So like a 6x3 kitchen, and like some more detail, but you're just using natural language there to.
Exactly. Yeah, it's already been released in the US, so we've already had it connected to Home Depot over there as like there were the trial run on it, and it's working really, really well. So we're launching it over here with those guys, and there's a few other little key bits and bobs that are happening as well. So there's digital signatures is coming, the T-Sheets integration for people that use T-Sheets, I believe, is QuickBooks, right? That's QuickBooks, I think, they bought T-Sheets out from memory.
I'm not sure.
And there are a new quote letter layout calculator, and then the AI part, I believe, is very, very soon. So
cool.
I think it's the next couple of weeks. So it's a pretty impressive way to estimate, especially if you just want someone that you just want to go in and do it really quickly and give me just a quick look at the pricing and the items I need.
Yep.
So hopefully that will help, especially the way you guys like that people estimate as well. People are more detailed and purchase ordering and that sort of thing.
Yes.
Help obviously a lot in terms of making sure your estimate versus your actuals are all lining up and stuff as well. So it really ties back into that conversation we're having there, Nadia, around the best way to track everything up.
Yeah, I love automation. More automation, the better.
Yeah. I think we've had this conversation a little bit, is that, over time, the deputy integration gets better, Xero integration gets better, Buildxact integration gets better with mobile apps, and we're going to have selections eventually as well. So like more detailed selection. So over time, these things are always going to get better. So if you are using any of those tools, or you've not used one of those tools because it didn't do something, always good to go back and check if it's done it in 6 months, a year, because chances are it could have done.
So we're thank you everyone for joining us. I just keep your eyes out for, we run these pretty much monthly now. We have a different topic every month. So keep your eyes out on your emails and Facebook, etc., for where we promote these. I don't mind, we can hang around just a little bit, Nadia. There's probably some questions in there that people wouldn't mind some answers on, but if people do need to go, that's fine, and they can head off. I don't have the chat from before I jumped out, unfortunately, and before my computer died. So if there's any, how do I register for the 6th, the event on the 6th? We'll be sending an email around. So everyone who is on this, we've got your email address, so we'll send out the invitation to that. So you'll see some more information coming your way on that. There was a question in there around on costs, etc., being allocated into the job, and how do you track that against the job? That probably the best way to answer that is to say that really your rates, your charge out rates, so that what you're charging labor cost at should include all of those additional on costs, so that you're catering for that in the rate that you've got in the job, so that and we've got a good calculator for that if you want to use that, and we'll send the link around for that, so that you can make sure you're covering super, annual leave, all those sort of on costs and they get grossed up and added into what your base rate is. So it means that you've got enough buffer in there in terms of your rate that you're charging against the job to be able to cover that. So we'll send out the charge out rate. We adjust it every year for, you know, things like super changing and all that sort of stuff. So we'll send you around a copy of that.
Yeah.
Any other questions though before we drop off that you feel like maybe we just didn't get to today?
Phil, while we're waiting for the questions, I forgot to mention that we do have on our websites all the links to previous webinars, including a breakdown about STP2. There's a whole breakdown about STP2 and how to set it up correctly. If you want to have a look at our website, there's a link there.
Yeah, I meant to mention that before. There's a whole page on our website about building construction accounting. It's got all of our previous webinars and things like that, and videos like the STP2, and our blog's got a lot of that information too. So on your chart of profit versus revenue, what revenue does it normally go pear-shaped? Well, yeah, currently growing from 1.6 to 2.8. So we won't say who that was, but yeah, that is at that point, once you push over 1 million, you know, 1.5 or so, even up to 2, you can probably start to hit some troubles at that point. It means that you've got multiple jobs on the go at that point, and often it's those concurrent projects. You just can't be across everything. You can't be across the cash flow on all of that. And so that's when, you know, things like job costing, you have to start getting those processes in place properly.
And I think this is also sort of an area he's moving towards, that area where he might benefit from a fractional CFO service.
Correct. Yeah,
absolutely, because this is what these guys specialize in as well. When you start tipping over into the bigger profits, bigger margins, bigger revenue, and you want to know things like this is where those guys are really good at.
Yeah, because that you know, the bookkeeping, good hygiene with your bookkeeping will make sure that you've got your data flowing properly into your books, and that's great. But the CFO advisory team will be able to look at that data and help with you getting all of those systems and processes set up as well, for sure. But they'll be able to look at all of that data and then help with solutions around how to manage all that complexity. And it's that thing, if you haven't done this thing before, then you don't know what you don't know. Whereas the CFO advisory team, they're commercial accountants, they've been CFOs, they've been in businesses before, and they've seen that growth trajectory happen. And so you're right, Nadia, that's the point where they usually kick in with their service to really help with how do we navigate all of that. And how do we make sure that we're not going to end up with that profit curve going the other way? Okay.
Phil, I have a question here that I would like to answer.
Yep.
The question is, when using tracking categories for different jobs, what do you do once the jobs are completed? Do you keep those on the historical data, or it will make the list really long? So in Xero, you can archive that job. Once it's done, closed off, you can archive it. You won't lose any data on it. It just archives it. So your list, I think you've got up to a limit of 200 that you can go, 200 job codes within Xero. So there's a fair bit, a bit of space there for you. But once the job's closed, you can archive it.
Yeah, it would be, it'd be getting a bit hard to navigate at 200 too, I'm sure. Yeah. So it was a good question. I like that one, actually. Yeah, once you've got a lot of jobs and all that history there, it just would be impractical to be navigating that. So you can archive them. All right. Well, I think unless it doesn't look like there's a whole lot more new ones in there, so we might wrap it up. We've got all of those poll results in terms of people wanting consultations. We've got all that data. We'll be coming back to you over the next few days to book in specific times with you for those sessions. Thanks, Jules, for coming along today. Thank you so much, Nadia, for your knowledge and expertise and putting aside the time for that today. And thank you to everyone who joined us. We hope to see you next time, wherever that is.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
thank
guys.
you.
Appreciate everyone.
See you, team.
See you all. Thank you. Bye.